All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Life Unchained. And what I really want to talk about today, I'm going to try and make it quick, is the vision. Essentially, I've done a podcast about what I just explaining Life Unchained and everything, but I haven't really explained what I'm all about, what I do, the work that I do, why I do it, and all that stuff. So, diving into that. Quick update though, the cadence has changed from once a week to once every 2 weeks, just due to that's the most sustainable way to, you know, put these podcasts out. Doing it weekly was becoming a bit too much. So for the time being, it's bi-weekly. And then what is coming down the pipeline is interviews. So it's not just going to be me. I'm going to have guests on. I have a pretty decent list. I'm really excited to start reaching out to these guys and get them on and have them share what they've been up to, their story, their thoughts on Life Unchained, how they are living Life Unchained. We're going to get into it. So, the overarching vision of everything that I'm doing is essentially helping men live Life Unchained through hormone optimization. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I talk about testosterone a lot. And to me, that's one of the biggest things going on in today's society with men. The amount that testosterone has decreased is pretty insane. It's about 1% to 1.8% per year for the last few decades. And so if you think about it, if that continues, we're going to get even lower. And the problems that arise from that are pretty big. So yeah, I'll get into and I was talking about this on my story the other day. This is about, we'll get into the testosterone and mental health. So not even talking about fertility and all that stuff. We're talking about mental health and low testosterone. It creates much more depression, much more anxiety in men. And part of the reason why I think what's going on in today's society, we're seeing antidepressants get prescribed at an alarming rate, like pretty high. Depression and anxiety are running rampant. And part of the reason why I think is because, yes, society, like there's tons of stuff going on in today's society, social media, comparison, dating's pretty tough. All of that stuff have impacts. But I think what doesn't get talked about enough is testosterone and its impact on men's mental health. And so let's look into this. Let's look at the ranges. So the normal range ends at 300. 300 is the lower limit. If you were 299, then you're considered low. If you're 300, you're considered normal. And we know that normal is bullshit. Normal is based on the average American. The average American is very unhealthy. So I think that antidepressants and all of this stuff are getting prescribed when in reality, maybe the person needs more testosterone because the ranges have lowered. If we go back 20 years, maybe the lower limit was 500 and therefore you'd get below into the 400s and they'd be like, oh yeah, you're in the lower limit. You need to do something about this. But because our levels have been lowering and lowering and lowering year after year, the ranges are coming down as well. So there's a disconnect. So you could be in the 400s and the doctor be like, yeah, you have normal levels of testosterone. Your depression isn't due to this, but in reality, it might be. And then there's a lot of other factors that go into it as well. All the other hormones like prolactin, is prolactin super high? That can create depression, can create a more just like blah feeling. If you think about, after you ejaculate, how do you feel? You're like, oh, tired. I just want to nap. Like the essentially the job was done. My purpose was fulfilled in terms of procreation. And you just want to relax. You just want to rest. If your prolactin's chronically high, you're going to feel like that on average. And then we can go into estrogen. If your estrogen is too high, if your free testosterone is, or if your total testosterone is fine, but your free testosterone is low, there's all these things. And I don't want to make this about that, but this is a major thing that I talk about and I deal with, and why testosterone is so important and why I'm so passionate about it, because it plays into this massive problem in today's society and with men, mental health, with depression and anxiety, even going into the suicide epidemic. Men are 3.5 to 4 times more likely to commit suicide than women. So something's going on, and I talk about this as well in terms of the care therapy for men isn't really working. I think it's 92% of Men who committed suicide were in therapy. And then 80% of those were marked as no risk of self-harm, no risk of suicide. And yet they did it anyway. So clearly there's a disconnect there. So maybe my point is maybe we should start to look at their blood levels, their testosterone, and support that in addition to counseling, mental health support, and all that stuff. That's all I'm saying on that. So we'll keep moving. The brand belief, like the why behind all this, is that I truly believe that health is a birthright. Every person on this planet, every man on this planet deserves to have good levels of health. And it's being robbed from them due to all these invisible chains, the poor nutrition, the poisonous food, the societal expectations, all these things just weighing us down, bringing us down. It's not how it should be. And then building on that, in true health, in health, we find our true selves. I usually say health is the foundation to a happy, fulfilling, successful life. And I really, really believe that. There's a quote, and I've talked about this before. A healthy man has 1,000 wishes, but an unhealthy man has one. And so that really illustrates the fact that health is everything. It's the foundation to be able to do what you want. If you don't have your health, if you don't have energy levels, what the fuck are you going to do? Your capacity for doing, for experiencing things in your life is going to be diminished. And that's why all of this stuff is so important. Because I come from that background. My health it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't that great. My energy levels were not great. My mental health was dog shit. I was lonely. I was isolated, depressed, anxious, all the things. And therefore, my life did not look very good. So they're connected. And that's why I'm really passionate about health, because it allows you to open up your life to achieve the things you want, have the energy, have the bandwidth to do. And yeah, super passionate about that. So with the why, like what's the what? Why am I doing this? What am I creating? So essentially the big vision is to just create a movement to change how men show up. And then through that, how we're perceived, because we're not perceived in the best light right now. Toxic masculinity, we hear about that all the time. And in my opinion, that's not masculinity at all. It's very immature energy. And so how are men showing up right now that we want to change? A lot of the times they're rigid. They're not very emotional. They're not in tune with those emotions. And therefore they have these walls up. They're stoic. They don't let anyone in. And there's this really big trend that I continually see from like fairly conscious men's coaches, is this idea that, yeah, vulnerability is cool, but only do it around men. Do not be vulnerable around your partner, because that will kill the polarity and they won't respect you anymore. I think that's dog shit. I think that's terrible advice. And that might just be my experience and my belief, which is, I'm entitled to that. But I really think that they're wrong, because the amount of connection that comes from being vulnerable is ridiculous. So if you're consistently denying your partner vulnerability, you're denying that aspect of connection. You're keeping yourself at arm's distance. You're not truly letting them in. There's a really good story that I like about CBum. He's Mr. Olympia, the bodybuilding competition. He's won it consistently, maybe the past like 2 to 3, 4 years, something like that. And there's a story of him. He's at his peak. Like he's essentially the biggest man in the world. And so there's a lot of masculine value in that. But there's a story of him leading up to his competition, of him literally breaking down crying on his bathroom floor, and his girlfriend at the time, fiance maybe, literally just holding him. I think there's so much power in that, of showing that vulnerability, showing that vulnerable side of yourself as a man with your partner. Because for me, there's nothing like feeling that support at your lowest, at your deepest, darkest point, having someone there to hold you and to tell you that they believe in you and that they are there for you to support you. There's nothing, like, I'm getting chills just talking about it. There's nothing like that for me. And if you don't show that vulnerable side, you don't get that connection. You don't get to feel that support from the person that's there to support you and be there with you and ride or die with you. So that's my opinion on that. And so, yeah, that's essentially how to show up for a man, be more vulnerable. That's a big aspect of things, and that will create more connection. That will create more fulfillment in your life. So yeah, that's that. We're gonna move forward. I'm just going through these, the what, the why, the how, the who. I'm going through those, and so the how, essentially, how do I do this? Two main things that I talk about all the time: functional blood work analysis, and then masculine development. That's a little bit on the newer side. That's essentially personal development, but for men. I call it masculine development. So blood work, I can talk about this forever, and I think I've done an episode on this, and if you want to check that out for a deeper dive, go check that out. It's blood work analysis. I think it's like episode 5 or 6. But the reason why I love it so much is because it eliminates all the guesswork. And there's so much information out there, so much dogma. You can talk to anyone and they pretty much give you their experience, what worked for them. But the way I coach and why I love blood work so much is there's no room for that, because the blood doesn't lie. And what the blood work tells me, the protocol is dictated by that, by the person's goals, by their biofeedback, by different biomarkers. So there's really no room for me to insert my personal opinions. And that's why I love it so much, because it really just gives the person what they need, exactly what they need, eliminates all the guesswork, you execute on it, your life changes. Pretty simple. And then masculine development, that's more on the, like I said, personal development side. I see men, and then me as well, I've had to deal with this stuff and still working on this stuff. It's a ever evolving journey. Is the masculine wound from other men, wound from the father, and then the feminine wound, the wound from the mother. How did these relationships play out? Was your father completely like disconnected and only provided financially, not really emotionally? I wasn't really present. That creates a wound. Maybe you have to overwork and show up consistently, burn yourself out to try and show him that you're worthy of his love. And so there's all these dynamics going on. And so that masculine development is really understanding these, creating awareness around, like these are the patterns that I'm continuing. Why is that? Is it because of my relationship with my father? Is it because of my relationship with my mother? Is it because the relationships that I've had in the past with romantic partners? Like, how is all this stuff interplaying? Creating awareness around that, because awareness is the first step to creating a change. And then acceptance of, wow, this is how I've been acting. I'm aware of it now. I can't change it. Accept it. And then you move forward and do something about it. Really specific for men is that self-love is creating an open heart and living from the heart, becoming a little bit more gentle and becoming a little bit softer. And now some people might get really upset hearing that, like, bro, like I'm hard. I'm not gonna be soft. But that's the balance of the masculine and the feminine that you need to have to become an integrated man, to really live life unchained. Yeah, it's really just a self-awareness piece as well of, these are all the patterns that are running in the background, and how do I then, with the awareness, change them and move forward. And so in the end, like, all of these things are moving men forward, moving you forward to truly just break the chains. And that's the rally cry that I'm going to be yelling from the rooftops on my megaphone forever, is that we're breaking chains here. And I've done an episode on what the chains are. There are a ton of them. And that episode doesn't cover all of them, but it covers a lot of them. And this episode was essentially describing how we're doing that, why we're doing that, all of the reasoning behind everything that I do, the content that I post, the work that I do, the program that I run, all of these things. So I'm going to wrap this one up here. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you took some insights from it, and I will see you on the next one.